in yet. And this is our first time. So we're very excited to have you, Mr. Williams. Desmond Williams is a 20-year educator in DC and Maryland and in Detroit. He has been a building leader and has also worked at the central level and has consulted across the country. He has a consulting company, and let me say, make sure I get it correct. It's Nalinka, correct? Nalinka Consulting Company, and he is the author of The Burning House, which you guys read this summer. So we are really excited to have you here. We definitely would like to press record because we really want to make sure that those staff members that may not be able to join us today will be able to listen in and know the work that we're going to start today that will continue as the year progresses. So we are grateful to have you. We thank God for this opportunity. And without further ado, I give you Desmond Williams.
Thank you for that, Ms. Peltier. But as Nicole said, I am a career teacher and educator. I started my career teaching in Washington, D.C., which is where Ms. Peltier and I met in 2001 at what was then Raymond Elementary School in Washington, D.C. She was a burgeoning fifth grade teacher, and I was just a little rookie trying to find my way in this world of education. But it's so good to reconnect with you all. Nicole and I had a conversation, I guess it was in late February, early March, upon the release of the book. And she said, Desmond, I want you to come to my school and I want you to help us with this work. And I said, Nicole, I am just, let's do it. And then this person named Rona came and hit, and it just kind of tore everything down. But I'm excited to be with you all. I have on a tie, and you guys can't smell me, but I have on my favorite cologne because I got dressed this morning thinking I was going to be in front of you. So I'm super excited to be with you. But I'm also really excited that this is a relatively intimate and small group. So we're going to have an opportunity to do some talking and some sharing, and really kind of give you guys some leverage and serve as a springboard for the work that you do with Black boys and really vulnerable groups in general. Okay. What I would ask you to do, I'm going to share my screen, and I would ask you to mute yourself. This is going to be really interactive. So I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself at times, but in as much as we possibly can, please keep yourself on mute to be respectful of the other people who were, to be respectful of the other folk who are with us. Okay. What are we doing here? Okay. Give me 1 second here. So I get myself together. Okay, can everyone see my screen? Awesome. So I titled this session Firefighting for Boys, and I tailored this to you all at Annunciation. And again, I'm happy to be with you. But for those of you who read the book, I do understand that there are some new staff members, and you don't necessarily have to have read the book to gain from this workshop, but I will reference the book at different times. But firefighting is this idea or this concept of being an advocate and being a political advocate for Black boys inside and outside of the classroom. So what we're going to talk about in really broad strokes, as we don't have that much time, is what that advocacy and what that firefighting can look like, and how we can transform the spaces that our children, particularly our Black boys, go to school in. And one of the things that I'm um, adamant about is, because when we look at all societal indicators, whether they be economic, educational, or even from a health perspective, if we are creating equitable spaces for Black boys, you're going to find buoyancy in your school building for all children, whether that be um, children with special needs, whether that be children who are living or fighting with poverty, whether that be 6th through 12th grade girls in math and science, because there certainly are biases against them. We'll find buoyancy in all of those arenas. Okay. What's happening here? Okay. So our session goes, we're going to define racism and outline the barriers to equity for our boys in your learning environment. We're going to identify and maybe share some of our biases, and that work is going to start with me. I'm going to share a few biases that I've had throughout my career. And then we're going to set a personalized action plan to support our growth as firefighters for Black males. Okay. What's happening here? A few housekeeping things. Even though we are in a virtual space, you know, we still have some housekeeping things that we want to consider. So first being, take care of yourself. Whatever that may mean. If the mailman, well, we're all in the building, so, but take care of yourself, okay? In whatever way that means to you, okay? If you have any questions, it says put them in a chat box, but I think because we're so intimate, this is an opportunity for us to kind of really interface at a different level. So if you want to unmute yourself and just say, I got a question, I'll attempt to answer it. If I think it's something I'm going to answer later in the presentation, then we may parking lot it, okay? But by all means, let's try to be more interactive. So if you have a question, go ahead and raise your concern. Participate and engage in the content. That's kind of self-explanatory. We're here, so let's make the best of it. I think we'll learn and gain from it, and I think we'll have the opportunity to learn and gain from each other. Embrace a growth mindset, as that's what we would want from our students who are sitting in front of us in our classroom spaces, okay? And last but not least, this is a safe space to learn and grow. I'm going to give a few personal anecdotes because I think that always disarms the audience. Nicole used the term thought leader, and it's really difficult for me to embrace that. I see myself first and foremost as a teacher. And if you read the book, I highlight in detail some of the mistakes that I made in being a teacher. And I also highlight some of the mistakes that I made even when I was considered to be a seasoned and well-rounded teacher. So I highlight those mistakes to say that we are all learning together, and this is not a place of judgment. We can make observations about the things that we hear, but we're not here to judge each other. We're here to learn, we're here to grow, and yeah, we're here to learn and to grow from each other, okay? Oh, and mute yourself when you are not speaking, okay? Okay, for our icebreaker, what we're going to do is I want us to, because it's the beginning of the school year for you all, and we're it gives me an opportunity to just learn a little bit about you and get a window into who you are as a person. I want you to take your cell phone and I just want you to find a picture that you took with your phone and give us a 30-second blurb about why you took that picture, what was happening, anything that you might want us to know about that particular picture. And yeah, let's say we'll keep it to approximately 30 seconds. Okay. So when I call on you, you can unmute yourself. What's happening here? So I'm going to stop sharing for a second. Miss Williams, you want to go first? Okay.
Okay, I apologize about that. I will, let's see. I went just last week, I want to say it was like Etlyn, Virginia. I went camping with my daughter and a little glamping, okay? I don't know if can you see this picture? Okay. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
that's my daughter, Jordan. We went, there was a like swimming hole right over here, and we spent the day just swimming. And I mean, there's no Wi-Fi there, which was new for us, but it was just nice, like for when she was young, you know, to go on the tire swinger, to run and jump off the dock, just simple things. You know, she went fishing. She hadn't done that in ages. But it was just nice to get away and forget about everything else and have that experience with her.
Okay. Thank you for sharing, Miss Williams.
You're welcome.
Sarah Bennett is not in the picture. Mr. Brendan, you want to go? We'll come back to you, Sarah.
Sure. So mine it's kind of an older picture that I recently dug up that I think is, I don't know, kind of funny. So I don't know if y'all can see this, but this is 3 Totino's pizza rolls.
Brendan, I haven't eaten this morning. That's so.
And I wanted to take just, you know, a classic frozen food. I'm a huge fan of cooking shows and the Food Network. And so I wanted to do my very best to make a nice sort of upscale presentation of a junk food that is near and dear to my heart. So this is a picture I took of some pizza rolls with a little bit of basil and a nice sriracha smear across the plate.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Brendan. Miss Sarah? You're on mute.
Sorry about that. I wish we could take myself off of mute before I start to speak. Anyhow, so I'm sharing a picture of some photographs that a friend took of me a few weeks ago. We were at a local brewery, and it was just completely candid, and it was just nice because I like how happy I look in this picture. Like, I remember the moment and just how I felt at the time, sitting there with my friend, having a couple beers, and just relaxing.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Miss Nellie, would you like to go next?
Sure. Here, let me see if you can see this. Can you guys sort of see this? I don't know if you can see it very clearly, but what you should be looking at is a robin that is sitting in a nest inside a grapes. So this is my garden at Newark Street Garden Association, which is not far over there by Newark Street, behind the District 2 police station. These grapes I've been growing for 4 years. It started as a tiny little stump that was on clearance. 4 years later, it's taken over an entire fence. This robin built its nest there, laid 4 eggs. I saw the eggs hatch. I saw the little hatchlings, and now even the baby hatchlings are gone. So it's sort of a good metaphor for our mission here.
Awesome. Awesome. Mr. Richard, would you like to go next? And then we'll go to Becky.
Sure, I'll go. Years ago, I bought this antique trunk, and it's kind of big and clunky and just really cool looking, and I've used it for a coffee table for years. And then not too long ago, I saw a picture online of how someone used a trunk and put wheels on it and used that as a table. And I said, wow, that would look really cool. So I bought some wheels and put it on, and I got really excited about it because I'm also looking for a new place and I kind of want to upgrade my furniture. So here's the finished table. You can't really see the wheels anymore, but it's really cool looking as a trunk and a table. So that's my picture.
Awesome. Awesome. Let's go to Becky and then Miss Noguera. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right.
If you can see this is a picture of my daughter Reese, the first day she got our dog Toby. And I would love to actually show you a picture of what she looks like now with Toby, which is exhaustion. But this is the photo we took the first day we brought Toby home. So we've been busy.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Okay, I don't know if you can see this picture. It's the very hungry caterpillar. I met him in person. I went to West Virginia, and I love to see that exactly the same hungry caterpillar of the book.
Wow. 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 Shout out to Eric Carl. Thank you for sharing, Miss Astrid.
You're welcome.
Mr. Smith. And then we'll go to Miss Ashanti.
Yeah, this picture is a photo of my brother-in-law and his new bride. This was taken on Monday, where they got married in their backyard. Of course, you know, during COVID, the social distancing and how that's going to work, and so they managed to pull it off. They have a big backyard, and family members with each other, and then those that were not family members was definitely social distancing. And I just thought it was a beautiful way of making something work regardless of the times we live in. So yeah, so it was awesome. They had a good time, and everyone had a good time, and they definitely truly belong with each other as well.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay, we'll go to Miss Ashanti and then Miss Veers.
I was gonna do it on mine.
Oh,
Is it me? Okay, so.
Sorry.
Okay, so this is a picture of me and my boyfriend. We went to the place where we had our first date. They were closed, so we finally went there. And it was super fun. And yeah, that's my picture.
Go ahead, Miss Veers, and then we'll go to Miss Mayhew. We'll go to Mary.
Okay, this is a picture of my happy place. This is a beach in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. It's called Henlopen Acres Beach, and you see the waves crashing on the rocks, and that's where I find my peace. It's right there at the ocean.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, Miss Veers. Go ahead, Mary. And then
Hi,
we'll
good
go
morning,
to
everybody.
Miss Messi.
Good morning. I have a picture. It's, I don't know if you guys can see it. It's sunflowers. And I just picked that one because I had to go to the post office. One of my daughters said, oh, can you find my keys to my apartment in Brooklyn and mail them to somewhere else? And it was, you know, everything is kind of stressful going to the post office, finding the keys, but
I did it and I came out and I saw those flowers and I just thought, you know, there's beauty all around us. And I just really like that picture. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Miss Messi, I hope I
Good
pronounced
morning,
that right.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Can you see my picture?
Yes, and it's good to see you.
Thank you. This is me and my daughter taking a picture in the backyard and spending very quality time, happy moment. So I'm glad to share with you. Thank you.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. Miss, I see someone holding their phone up, but you're on mute. Go ahead. It's on you. You're still on mute though. Sprint IS at Annunciation. You're still on mute.
Prentice, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you now.
Prentice, I saw this when I was stuck in traffic a couple of months ago, a few months ago. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a outlet on the back of this man's car right beside the tag. I'm not sure if you guys can see that.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can make it bigger.
No, we can see it.
Yeah, I thought it was funny as all get out because I was like, I know that's not real, but whatever he did to make it look real on the back of his car, I found it hilarious and I needed it on that day.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. It says CS Treat. Excuse me for if I mispronounced that.
That's okay. It is street, like the street outside, STREAT.
Okay. Good to meet you, Miss Street.
Nice to meet you too. Okay, so the question that you wanted us to do, I've been in and out, was to look at a picture on our phone, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Unfortunately, my life is not as exciting as others. My most recent photo is of Miss Mac for her digital ID badge. And then other stuff is like my medical card for school and all kinds of other stuff. So I don't have any pictures on here that are not like for work. That's sad, right? That's really sad. But so yeah, I probably need to get a life, y'all. And then the other one that's not, well, that's the book, that's the stamped book. That's
Okay.
about all I got that's not related to work. But kind of sort of that was related to work because I read that over the summer in case we were going to teach that. So that's still kind of related to work.
Okay.
All right, that's all I got. Sorry.
Oh, excellent. My copy of Stamped is literally right over my ear. So that's that you have a life. That's great. Thank you for sharing. I don't want to mispronounce this, but I want to say, is the last name Hindi?
Hingy.
Hingy. Okay. Good to meet you, sir.
Pleasure to meet you as well. I guess I got here a little late, so I wasn't sure if we were going to our most recent picture.
It could be any picture. It could be any
cool.
picture.
Well, I kind of went to a video. I coached basketball, and this is like the first basketball team I ever coached. Well, not the first basketball team I ever coached, but the first team I got to be the head coach of. And I was teaching my guys about reversing the ball and keeping the ball on one side of the floor. And then we ended up getting a score on the play, so it was kind of cool. And this was like 6 years ago, but I still hold on to the video a lot when I watch it a whole lot, and even text the guys like, "This is what ball reversal is," and all the other good stuff. So,
yeah, reverse the ball, move the defense. Awesome.
Yep.
Awesome.
Thank you.
And Luis McHale.
Hello. There we are. It's finally working. I came in a little late, so I'm a little lost on what we're doing at the moment.
Yes, sir, Father McHale. We are in icebreaker mode, so we want you to find a quick picture on your phone and give us a 30-second blurb on what was happening when you took the picture or why you think the picture is significant or anything that you want to share.
Yeah. Let me see what I've got.
while while he's doing that, or we'll wait for you. We'll wait. I'll be patient.
I can't find the picture at the moment, but the one that I'm looking for is my graduation photo from seminary, from minor seminary. I'm not a priest just yet.
Okay.
So I have a couple years for that left. But yeah, it was just meaningful to get back together with all the guys after, with the COVID being away for the semester, and it's just good to be back with everyone. I can't find the photo at the moment. I do apologize.
Okay, no worries. Where did you go to seminary?
So I just graduated from St. John Paul II Seminary at over in Brookland, and from Catholic University as well. And so I'm here at Annunciation for the year, during a pastoral year before going on to a major seminary, probably at Mount St. Mary's or at Theological College in DC.
Awesome. Okay. Miss Nicole, I believe you are last, but certainly not least.
Okay, so can you guys see that? Okay. That looks like myself and Mr. Keitlinger. Mr. Keitlinger had hair and I had ponytails. But this is a copy of a illustration from my children's book that I released this summer. And it really says a lot about like our adventures this summer in terms of getting school ready in the midst of COVID. So again, I'll let you see my daughter in print and her friend Juan, who is Mr. Keitlinger on this ride.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Okay. Thank you all for sharing. I think even in virtual spaces, I can't stress enough how important it is that we continue to build community. And even though we don't have that much time today, I think that community building is important because it gives us a small glimpse into each other's world. So I thank you all for sharing that. I'm going to share. My clicker is not working, so forgive me. I'm going to share. This is, believe it or not, as strikingly handsome and as young as I am. This picture is from 2007. And this is an old friend of mine, Ashley Tannehill. And I'll tell you a little bit more about Ashley as we get ready to depart, okay? Okay, so we're going to break into groups of 2, maybe into groups of 3, depending on how our numbers shake out. And you're going to do a quick share, okay? And I want you to share, tell us about the person who, or the people who comforted you when you were sick, when you were upset, when you were frustrated, or when you were angry, okay? And we'll give about a minute each. So if you're in a group of 2, you'll talk for a minute and you will listen for a minute, okay? So you're gonna tell us about the person or people in your childhood who helped you when you were hurt, sick, or frustrated. And tell us about those people who came to your aid, okay? And I'm going to break us out. And when you get to your breakout room, just be mindful of the time because I'm going to move us pretty quickly. So when you get to a minute, go ahead and stop and let the other person start speaking. Okay? You got something? Awesome. Okay. Once you get in the room, go ahead and unmute yourself. What happened there?
And can I get back to my breakout room?
What?
I think
Breakout rooms. Hold on there.
Thank you.
Give me a second here.
No problem. Just accidentally like exited out because I saw one of the other screens still going.
No, and I meant to create 9 rooms instead of.
Our breakout room session ended.
Yeah, that was my fault, ladies and gentlemen. Give me a second. I'm gonna redo the rooms. Close all. Breakout rooms. Okay, let's do this because I kind of filed that up. Do we have a few people who want to who just want to share for the whole group? Breakout room 1 in. Okay, sorry about that. Sorry about that, guys. Let's try that again. Okay, let's try that again. And Miss Mary, if you can hear me, I'm going to move you to another room, okay? So Mr. Smith, do you have a room assigned? Okay, good. What happened?
I went to my breakout room and no one was there.
Okay.
But that's okay. I already gave my blurb to one of the breakout rooms. So
Okay.
Ashante is in my classroom right now because her signal is too weak in her classroom. So
That's fine.
we're kind of actually together too. So we're kind of keeping it talking.
Okay. Do you want to?
Technology is fun.
Do you want to share with me really quickly?
Sure, I can. My go-to person was my mom. She was just a nurturer by spirit. And when I was diagnosed at a young age to have dyslexia, she was the one to actually figure it out. She was a nurse and knew this isn't right. And so, and then of course, throughout grade school, middle school, high school, she was the one that stayed up late helping me with homework and all that. So she was my good. How about you?
I would point to parents, particularly my mother, and I would also point to aunts and my grandmother. Yeah.
Wow. So a lot of strong women in your family.
Yeah, lots of Yeah, lots of strong women and lots of men who said, suck it up and get yourself together.
Just do what they say and you'll be fine.
Yes.
Oh, that's great. Oh, well, thanks. All right, I'm going to leave the bathroom and I can go back by my desk.
Okay.
Does that work?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you for
Sure,
sharing.
thank you.
Okay. Sorry for that that mix up. I created 2 breakup rooms instead of 9. So my deepest apologies for that. We're going to try that one more time, but this time I want you to, we'll take about a minute and a half because this conversation may be a little longer. And I want you to share the first time you found out that you had a race. I want you to share the first time you found out that you had that you actually had a race. Okay, and I'm gonna break us up, and I'm gonna create 9 rooms instead of 2, and I'm gonna put you with your same partners. Okay, and if you think you need more time, then let me know. Okay, I'm opening the rooms.
As a kid, like I have a lot of friends who are of different backgrounds, and to me that didn't seem, it seems normal to have friends of different backgrounds. But I grew up with some parents who had some very strong views about race, and I remember my mom would always say to me,
Different firsts or discoveries. Anybody else?
Yeah, I think mine was when I think about it, was when I first went to school, and I actually moved out to Silver Spring. I was raised in Washington D.C. Well, up until I was 4 or 5 years old, and my family was very close around me, and kind of like you, I just saw my family a lot of times. We didn't travel outside of, and then I moved to Silver Spring.
That's what I noticed, that I was very different because I was the only Latin person there.
Okay.
So oh my gosh, so it kind of go that word. But I remember before that I was. It's funny. My family think that I'm very white.
Okay.
So
Man, I want to stay in this conversation.
I know, right?
I so want to stay in this room.
And it's even to this day, it's very hard for me to define this is this, and maybe lately, I can say lately.
Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting.
Yeah, I think, like I was saying,
I heard some very rich conversations. Sorry, there were a few rooms I was like, man, I hate to leave. But I heard some very rich conversations. Is there anyone who would like to share either of the scenarios that I gave, whether it be who were the people who nurtured you and what did that look like, or when you first discovered that you had a race? Mr. Smith?
Yeah. Richard said he went to 2 pre-Ks. He got kicked out of the first one. I was like, pre-K? How you get kicked out of pre-K? So he got kicked out of pre-K school, the first one. And the second one, he met this, he was at all with his African-American teacher. She dressed beautifully. He was at all, like, he said his mother didn't dress like that. She just talked up every day. He was just, just at all with her. So that's when he recognized that there was a race, like, because he was living in his little bubble, so to speak. But I was like, man, you got kicked out of first pre-K twice. So, and then for myself, growing up in the Virgin Islands, St. Thomas, to be exact, the notion of race, it was no discovery. It was, you knew who you were from your surroundings, from the way your parents brought you up. It wasn't a polarizing black and white. The Caribbean, the area I grew up in was mainly African, West Indian. And so it wasn't like, oh, this was a defining moment that I discovered I was this. It wasn't like that. So I shared with Richard that I know when I realized that when I was at Howard University and I took a class in African studies, and the professor was like, there is no race. There is, because we're not running towards something. So we're not competing. But what he did share is because there's only one race, which was a human race. So I shared that with Richard just now. So, you grapple with it. I'm also think about it is comes across as, socioeconomic structures and how Eurocentric versus Afrocentric thinking and the paradigms. So it's a lot more than just a race, like a label being placed on you. But as I grew older in the Virgin Islands, when my father, he has his own business. So he had his cab taxi safari business. So we will pick people from the cruise ship up and take them to the hotels or take them to the islands, tours of the islands and the big spots to go to, the traditional tourism places. And so you definitely saw at that time in that manner, like, these were definitely different from people that you knew would interact with on a daily basis. So at that point, I can reflect and say, okay, there is a difference between them and us, lifestyle-wise, because we were the one that were paying to take them around the islands, take them to the hotels. And so, that on that level of, race, it was clearly distinctive, a difference in the two.
Okay. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else want to share from either of the 2 prompts?
Sure. I'll share. So talking with Chris, and she was telling me a story about like how when she was a child, like her family would go to the park, and there was a pool at the park, and she would want to go swimming in the pool, but her parents told her that she couldn't because it was a dirty pool. It was a during kind of segregation and whatnot, and she just talks about how, nowadays she still goes back to that same park and like she thinks about those moments and how, it kind of brings forth a bit of uncomfortableness, but a good uncomfortableness, as she said. We should be feeling uncomfortable now in terms of wanting to change things. And as for me, I remember growing up, I don't really ever remember seeing skin color as a kid. And I would just be friends with whoever was nice to me, whoever was cool, like whoever I wanted to play with. I remember my mom would say to me things like, if I had a birthday party to go to, or if I had kids over, Sarah, your birthday parties are like going to the UN. Why can't you have any white friends? And I just think, why does it matter that my friends are different colors or from different backgrounds? To me, all that matters was, to have fun playing with them. other nice people. I'm still like even today, like I think about like those comments that she would, you can't have any white friends. It shouldn't matter at all.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. We start the conversation there as a segue into this notion of the difference between race and ethnicity. And I think Mr. Smith, I appreciate what everyone said, but this concept of we lived together and we always knew who we were. And it's interesting that he says that, because growing up in Detroit, I lived in an all African American community and went to school with only African Americans. And I think if you read the book, I say in the intro to the book, I knew I was Black, but I didn't know what it meant. And I was, and not to give the book away to people who didn't read it, but I got teased and laughed at because I wasn't rooting for Doug Williams and a Black quarterback in the Super Bowl. And that experience for me was racially traumatic, because it didn't happen at school. It didn't happen with my friends. It was my family chastising me and teasing me, and ultimately leading me to this place of there are certain expectations put on you because of racism. Really picking back off of, what Sarah said in terms of what does it matter who your friends are at a party. If there are people who treat you nice, then what else matters? So this slide here, I just want to, and I also need to say, not having heard from everyone, I applaud you all for how you engage in this conversation, because typically speaking, when I do this exercise, we are much more willing to have the conversation about those who comforted us than we're a lot more subdued in terms of our volume and our energy when we talk about constructing racial identity. So this slide is from a Dr. Janice Helms. She is a professor of African American studies. She was last at Boston College. And she says that culture is an important in determining how people within groups communicate with each other and understand the world. It's also, culture can be defined as values and customs and language and social skills and how things are transmitted from generation to generation. It may be shared by different racial groups, right? So, and that simply means that it may be important in this particular racial group to eat this particular food at this particular holiday. That could be shared by multiple groups, okay? There are different customs and aspects of culture that can be shared. But that oftentimes culture can be invisible. It's just who we are. And that was part of the traumatic experience that I said. And I think, not to put words in Mr. Smith's mouth, but he mentioned that when Dad was cab driving, you saw the differences in how groups were living, right? And those differences become prevalent once you move out of, they become more noticeable, I should say, when you move out of your bubble, regardless of the size of that bubble, okay? So this is what I want us to do. The question is, when we start thinking about our boys, and we'll come back to this notion of race and ethnicity when we start to dive into bias. When you think of boys in school, what do you think of, okay? And I want you to think in terms of a word or a phrase, and you can unmute yourself and we can just throw some phrases out. When we think of boys in school, what do you think of, a word or a phrase? And we can literally jump in at once.
Rambunctious.
Rambunctious. Love it.
Energetic.
Energetic.
Excited.
Mischievous.
Mischievous.
Rowdy.
Rowdy. I thought I heard curious. Okay. Anyone else?
Different.
Different. Who said that? I have different, rambunctious, energetic, excited, mischievous, curious. Anything else? Boys in schools.
Young Lions.
Young lion. Who said that? Explain. What do you mean by that?
Because you know, they're figuring out their roles in society, and like when you look at the Lion King, when little Simba was, you know, going to the jungle and he's becoming a young man, and the different roles he went through, and then he evolved into this strong person, this strong animal. So boys, or if it's done well, boys are more the ones that's more energetic in our society, the norms of that nature. I mean, girls are too, but I believe that there's a cycle that young boys go through when they're young in pre-K to like 5th grade. If they're talkative, they're like, okay, he's okay. But as they evolve through the level of middle school, then the interactions with teachers often are like confrontational. If he's talkative, they're like, you know, their tone changes from Johnny's cute, you know, be quiet, just, you know, but then as he evolves into this strong, you know, confident young man, they're like become more like offensive, like you repulse them. You know, so I've seen it because I know for myself, I've seen it done to myself, and I've seen it done as an educated, but growing up with people who were strong young lions, be in the Caribbean or in New York. I've seen the way teachers treated me versus them, and both treated myself as well as I evolved to a young man where I knew I was confident because my parents instilled that in me. But you saw some teachers started to be like intimidated by me, so I had to force myself to kind of put on glasses to kind of change my look, to be more receptive, accepting towards them. Because, you know, as a young black male, it was for me, the norm was if you're too aggressive, you have to change your who you are. Versus other roles of society, they don't have to change. They just looked as this champion, as though like, you know, this young leader. But as a young black male, growing up in the Virgin Islands, it was accepted that you're supposed to be strong and, you know, and confident. But as I moved to New York City, it was a total different ball game, and I'm glad that I had the foundation laid to be not as, you know, turned off from education by the time I got to New York, because I've seen a lot of my brothers and my family just kind of like, they put school to the side because they were too confident or too aggressive for the environment, and they didn't know how to deal with that aggression or that confidence of those individuals.
Okay. A few more words or phrases?
So I have 3 words.
Okay.
Soulful, misunderstood, and overlooked.
Soulful, misunderstood,
Overlooked.
and overlooked. Okay. Soulful. We're gonna have to unpack that, Miss Street.
Soulful. I spent, for whatever reason.
Actually, let me pause that because we're gonna get to it. I'm just gonna say pause for 30 seconds. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Now.
What's happening here? Okay. When you think of black boys in school, what do you think of? Okay. And we're going to go through the same exercise. You may use the same words again, potentially, but what are some words or phrases that you think of when we think of Black boys in school? And we can throw those phrases out.
I don't think anything.
I'd stick with rambunctious.
Okay.
I think
Plenty of potential.
I don't think anything. Rambunctious.
Serious.
Serious. There was something else in between there.
Plenty of potential.
Potential.
Misunderstood.
Misunderstood. Okay. Excellent. I believe that was said twice. That was said for both. Okay. Someone else?
I have something to say. Having spent most of my years teaching in South Florida,
Okay.
in predominantly white public school, potentially challenging. You're not sure what you were going to get.
Mhm. Thank you for that, Miss Williams. Miss, was it Miss Astrid? You said you don't think of anything. Can we unpack that? What do you mean by that?
That all the children are equal. They are no different.
Okay.
I don't think anything. Because
All
I'm going
the
to teach Latin, or I'm going to teach Black, or I'm going to teach. I don't think anything.
okay. So all the children are not different. Okay. Okay.
I'm going to say creative
Creative. Okay.
and accepting.
Accepting. Okay. Thank you for that. I had my head down. I didn't see who that was, but thank you for that.
I like to say complex.
Complex. Okay. Can we unpack accepting? I'm sorry. Can we unpack accepting?
I pulled that word out from my youth and how most of the bullying and non-acceptance that I experienced in school was from the white kids, and the people that helped me move along and get out of that bullying was the Black children in the school. So from my experience, I have experienced acceptance from the Black kids in school.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that. Okay. So the boys in our, we're going to come back to that. The boys in our classes, okay? And you may recognize these faces, but the boys in our classes, someone used the word potential in describing Black boys. I love that word. I think it's a word that describes all the children that come to us, because we just don't, right? We don't know. And I think that's what makes teaching such a miracle. But I also think it's what makes our job so challenging. It's our job to kind of mold our students and get them ready for the next challenge. So we don't know who our boys are, and our goal as educators is to bring out the best in them. Can we, someone is not on mute. Can you please make sure you mute yourself? Thank you. Okay. As we move along, diving into the book a little bit, some of the barriers to Black boys self-actualizing in schools. And these are right out of the book. I talk about neoliberalism and disenfranchisement, Eurocentric curriculum and Eurocentric testing, but specifically high stakes testing, soft bigotry, which we're gonna be able to dive into a little bit today, and low expectations, punitive discipline. I had a conversation with Ms. Peltier, and she said she thought you guys were moving in the right direction in terms of your discipline. So I applaud you all as a school for that. Referrals for special education, which we won't have a lot of time to talk about today, but as someone was saying, in terms of being suspended in school, the National Center for Educational Statistics has been keeping data on pre-K suspensions since approximately 2014, and boys make up the overwhelming majority of suspensions. Black boys represent approximately 17 or 18% of the preschool population, and they are approximately 45% of the pre-K suspensions. So one of the things that we talk about when we talk about referrals is referral to the office, referrals for suspensions, referral for special education, but also referrals for gifted and talented programming, okay? Other barriers, lack of tag, and then this notion of a lack of Black male educators in the field in terms of how that takes away from mirrors. And if I could give you guys a quick story, I was, when I was a younger man and I was single, I had some friends over to my apartment, and they said, "Desmond, where are your pictures?" And I said, "What?" They said, "You don't have any pictures on your walls." He was like, "You don't have any pictures of your family or anything?" And I said, "Am I supposed to have that?" And a friend of mine said to me, "Your home, this is not a house. This is not a home. It looks alien." And I had never really thought about it, but in 99% of the homes that you go into, when you look on the walls, right, you see pictures of family, and that is a representation of the things that we value, right? So when we talk about some of the things that hurt Black boys, or some of the things that hinder them, they need to see people who look like themselves, particularly in academic pursuits. Okay, so those are some of the barriers, but one of the things that I want to say is all of those things are rooted in racism. Okay, and again, when we talk about, in many instances, maybe not in this one, but in many instances, when we talk about racism in schools, it can be a touchy subject because racism is just a touchy subject in general, and it makes us a little bit uneasy. And that's even in the current times that we live in, with everything that's happened in this pandemic, post George Floyd. It's still a touchy subject. But as I said earlier, this is a safe place, and it's an opportunity for us to learn from each other. Okay. Now, Desmond Williams, what do you mean when you say racism? I want to give us a working definition that will kind of give a sense of what I'm talking about as it relates to how this phenomenon works in society, but how it works in our schools. Okay. And I don't know why that just did that. Okay. At its core, racism is a relationship between groups. It is any thought, speech, action, or symbolism that either consciously or unconsciously creates, promotes, or maintains a power relationship of individuals who are identified as white on top, and individuals defined as people of color on the bottom of said power equation. Okay? So that's our working definition of racism. And I think it's important to point out this notion of what's conscious versus unconscious, because in my 19 years of working, well, my 16 years of working in schools, very rarely have I met teachers who were overtly racist. I talk about this concept of a school counselor making a decision to purposefully not refer a student for a particular scholarship, or to tell a student you're not college material. Those things happen. I'm not denying that. But I think the point that I want to make is racism in schools is much more insidious, and it's more difficult to recognize than the stereotypical car carrying, pickup truck driving, stereotypical trope of car carrying racist. Okay. So I just wanted to highlight that notion of conscious versus unconscious actions and speech and thoughts. Okay. Okay. We're going to spend some time, for those of you who read the book, we're going to spend some time in the burning house, and we're going to go into the living room. And this graphic is hard to see, but I'm going to read it. But the living room of the burning house, it says, structurally, when entering a house, guests enter through the living room. As such, the living room represents whiteness in the burning house. It affects all inhabitants. Whiteness is a form of racism that pushes African American and all children of color, for that matter, and their identity to the margins, and typecast them as irrelevant and unwilling to learn. Okay, so let's jump into the living room and see what we can figure out here. Okay, is everyone with me? Okay. Okay. In chapter 6 of the book, I talk about this notion of whiteness and how it impacts children. And one of the things that I found in the research, and one of the things that I have found in talking to and working with teachers, is that we just don't know what we don't know. Going back to Mr. Smith's point, I talk about growing up in Detroit. And this is not in the book, but I remember having a conversation. I think I was 9 or 10 years old, and my dad and I were watching World News Tonight with Peter Jennings. And I can't remember the exact story he was covering, but the camera spanned over a city. And I said, Dad, there are lots of white people there. And he said, and I said, that's a lot of white people. And he said to me, white people are the majority in this country, boy. And I said, no, they ain't. This is Detroit. Like, we go days and days without seeing white people. And we were on a couch, and he just kind of looked at me like, I've not taught this boy anything. Well, what's the point in that little anecdote? We all have to grow, and we all have to learn. So regardless of where you are in terms of these, what I call domains of whiteness, this is an opportunity for us to grow and to be conscious of our thought patterns and our processes and how they impact the children that we serve. Okay, how we doing? Okay, so I'm going to start with color blindness. And I got finger wagged from a friend of mine, because in the book, when I talk about color blindness, I say that I believe to some degree when people say they don't see color, what they really mean is I am not going to judge people based on their race to the degree that I am going to withhold things from them, okay? And I'm not going to judge people by their race to the degree that I give them something based on their race. So I was really coming from giving people who quote unquote practice color blindness. I was really giving them the benefit of the doubt. And one of my good friends, his name is Lorenzo Hughes, who's actually awesome. He works in Anne Arundel County Public Schools as a diversity and equity officer. And he says, you know, sometimes people practice color blindness to purposefully push groups to the margin. And I acknowledge that. But I just wanted to, again, point out that it can be unconscious or conscious. What ends up happening is when you don't see color, particularly as a white person not seeing the color of people of color, it is dismissive of their heritage, their culture, their history, their ancestry, and everything else that goes into that person's racial identity. Okay? This notion of a messianic complex, that is simply, I am here to save you. Okay? And I think it's important in the work that we do, particularly in what I would call mission-driven Catholic schools. We're here to help and support and teach and love on our children, but we don't have to look at them as charity cases, okay? Very important distinction. Deracination, I hope to talk about a little bit later, but that is simply, it's closely related to color blindness, and that is taking away the race and ethnicity of a person to make them look more like white dominant social structures, whether that be in how we speak, music we listen to, the pedagogy that we're using, and or even the content that we're teaching. Okay? This notion of lowered expectations, that is one of the biggest issues that I tend to see in the work that I do. And that is simply not believing that all children can learn. And we typically say as teachers, right, I believe all of our students can learn, but what we really need to be asking ourselves, am I in a position in terms of my mindset, am I in a position to have all of the children who are in front of me learn every day? Okay. Because what often happens is when we have children who are dealing with issues at home, whether it be poverty or, you know, children who are dealing with trauma and violence, the mothers who never return our phone calls or call us angry or come up to the school angry, it can be very difficult to kind of think about that child, that family, as someone who needs to meet all of the expectations, academic and behavioral, that we have for other children who don't have those same issues. Okay. And then this notion of toxic altruism, I want to skip that because that doesn't apply to you all at Annunciation, but that is simply this idea of the children are blessed because I'm here. So the mere fact that I sit in front of children is enough, and I can just peddle worksheets to them and they're going to do well. But again, that doesn't apply to us, but I do talk about that extensively in the book. Okay. Black teachers are not off the hook. Okay. It's very important that everyone who works with Black children be very mindful. Again, what are you bringing to the table in terms of your outlook, your perceptions regarding Black children? And I'm just going to read this verbatim. It says, potentially Black educators, regardless of social economic status, can grow disconnected from some Black students based on their current social economic status because of values clashes. So race is a thing in our schools, but there's ample research that shows that Black teachers can tend to be disconnected from the children they serve because of social economic status. And that social economic status causes values clashes, causes a value clash. Okay, let's do this. It's approximately 10:30. I think we have about another 50 minutes, but let's take a 3-minute stretch break. Let's take care of ourselves. If you want to get up and walk around, go ahead and do that. If you want to check your phone or something like that, I have 10:22. Let's come back at 10:26. Okay, let's come back at 10:26. How we doing on time, Ms. Peltier? I think we have about another hour, and then we'll jump into Q&A. You're on mute. She can't hear me. Okay, people, how are we doing? You can unmute yourselves. Are we back? LTA, I think we lost we lost a few people. We'll give them another couple of seconds.
Desmond,
Uh-huh.
something. Do you think Black boys are more self-conscious about their, or do you think they're negotiating their social position more than, say, your typical child? Do you know what I mean?
Are they
Are you-
negotiating or
Are
conscious
they
of their
more
social
conscious
position?
of, yeah, exactly, do you think, than any other kid? Is it more of a burden? You know what I mean?
I think so. There's actually a lot of research on that, Nellie.
Right.
When we talk about this notion of, when we talk about this concept of racial identity formation.
Mhm.
But let's give people another 12 seconds.
Sure, absolutely.
And then I'll have you ask the question, and then I'll answer it.
Okay.
Because I think it's important, and I think it's a very interesting question. I think it's a very interesting question. Okay, let's go ahead and jump back into this for the sake of time. Go ahead, ask your question one more time, Nellie.
I'm not sure if I can formulate it exactly, but when you were saying before, think of a word, I was thinking burdened, but sort of in a way that Black boys might be more conscious of their social position than, or I'm asking, are they? Because I'm not sure. But it seems like in my when I've tried to when I've taught,
Mhm.
that I have to go through some kind of a gauntlet. You know what I mean? I have to prove myself to be trustworthy in that it's, you know what I mean? I'm the one going through the gauntlet, that I have to prove that I'm trustworthy before I'm allowed to teach or something like that. I don't know if that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense. But I'm gonna cheat and ask you another question.
Sure.
Tell us about the gauntlet. Tell us about that.
The gauntlet process is something like, you know, we all want to imagine, you know, you have these perfect kids that are easily formed, and we could just go there and, you know, pour our information into them and they will thrive and grow.
Mhm.
What I'm saying is that just by physical feature, you know, facial, just emotions, you know what I mean? And you can see an emotionness in terms of face, that I'm asked certain questions and I'm, you know, literally like asked very pointed, specific questions about my position on certain things before I'm given a pass to say I'm okay.
Okay.
It would be something as simple as like this Black Lives Matter thing was very traumatic for a lot of the kids this summer, you know? They were absolutely depressed about it, that they didn't, so they'd ask me something like that, like, what's my position? What do I think of it? What do I think of George, you know, what happened to Floyd? You know, very, very basic questions of things that are going on today.
So let me jump in, and I thank you for your courage in asking that question. The first thing I would say is, you know, our families, the families at Annunciation, that's your customer base, right? And think about something as minimum as a $30 shirt, and you taking it to the cleaners. You might pass by 4 different cleaners to go to this particular cleaners because you trust them. And I think when you talk about, I suspected, but you confirmed, when you talk about the gauntlet, that's actually a process of vetting. Like, is this someone I can trust? Is this someone who I think I can learn from? And is this someone who um, maybe believes the same thing that I believe, but maybe can answer questions that I may not be sure about. Sometimes it's difficult to tell where those questions come from. Like I don't necessarily have that context, but I can tell you, I've been through that gauntlet, particularly when I was teaching at the middle school level. It's it's more innocuous at the elementary level. It's do you like PJ Masks, right? That kind of a thing. But when you get to middle and high school, it's Ms. Nelly, I know you ain't voting for Trump, right? I know you voted for Obama 3 times. It's like I can't vote for Obama 3 times. But that's the gauntlet. And I think that is I think children now are more socially and politically sophisticated than children were in the mid 90s versus children in the mid 70s, certainly versus children in the mid 40s and the mid 50s. So I think that's part of it. And that's just the world we live in becoming so much smaller because of globalization and social media and things like that. To your initial question, do we believe that they are more aware? I think it depends on the child, but I think it depends on the child. I think it depends on family structure and family dynamic. But there is, again, lots of research about racial identity development and when it transpires and how it looks and how it forms in certain spaces. And I'm glad you asked because it looks very different. But oftentimes, when you hear phrases such as being unapologetically Black or being unapologetically who you are, that stems from this notion of I want to be myself at all times. And when I can't be who I am at all times, that is that notion of a burden, right? So are all the boys, are all the students, regardless of gender, are all the students of color feeling that? It's hard to say, but there's a lot of research that points to racial identity being formed very early on, right? I go back to Kenneth Clark and the Black Doll test from the early 1960s, where racial attitudes and racial identities get formed at very early ages. Does that necessarily mean 4 and 5-year-olds, don't prefer Power Rangers? They want to watch some kind of militant TV? Not necessarily, right? So I think that identity happens in stages. And then the movement through those various stages depends on other social and societal factors. Yeah. Okay. But thank you for that question. Okay. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed your stretch break. Let's keep moving. So, and Nellie's question is actually a perfect segue into going back to this notion of who we are and what we bring to the classroom. And the question I ask is, what shape are you? Okay. Are you a circle, a triangle, an oval, a rectangle, a sphere? What shape are you exactly? And by that, I simply mean we just want to take a few seconds to reflect. But what has shaped you? What events have shaped you as a teacher? What events, and see if you can think of 2 or 3 events, right, that have shaped you as a teacher. And it doesn't necessarily have to be events that made you decide to be a teacher. It could be events that happen in the profession that really drove how you present yourself or how you approach the work. So let's take a few seconds to reflect, and then we'll ask for a few people to share out. take 30 seconds or so. Okay, someone want to share maybe one or two events that shaped you as an educator? And you can just unmute yourself and jump in.
I want to say I quickly learned my first year of teaching mutual respect. That for me, at least, that was my key to success, especially reaching the more challenging students that wanted to test me out. Mutual respect. It's done wonders for me. And I remember someone else, another teacher saying, you know, you got to reach them before you can teach them, which I kind of feel it's a bit synonymous.
Okay, awesome. Someone else?
I picked the triangle, not just because it's a delta.
Yeah, because the shapes are actually
sorority
arbitrary.
affiliation. I didn't do all, but I picked it because for me the delta means, you know, the idea of delta in Greek means change, right? In math and physics and all.
Mm-hmm.
I was a student in a predominantly white classical prep school. I had teachers who decided that I always wanted to be a pediatrician. And I had a science teacher in my advanced placement science class who served as an obstacle to me receiving access to the curriculum. I'll put it that way. And I remember, and then when I went to him, I said, you know, I want to go to an institution with a reputation. And he started to name off prisons and mental institutions for women in the state of Massachusetts.
Wow.
In that moment, I just thought to myself, I'm not going to be a pediatrician anymore, because I dealt with him. And I told him, I said, wait till next year when I get into the schools of my choice and I prove you wrong. But that became, like Mr. Smith said, I had an ethnic identity based in being a Caribbean girl in a Caribbean environment in this multicultural world. So I already knew you can't do that to me.
Mm-hmm.
But knowing that and having that experience, I then said, you know what, I'm going to be an educator and I'm going to be his boss. So he can't do that to kids that look like me. And that is why I picked the triangle, because a triangle means change.
Mm. Thank you for sharing, Ms. Peltier. Powerful storytelling. Thank you. Someone else?
I would like to share.
Go ahead, Mr. Richard.
When I first started working at this school, all the teachers said that this young man, Victor is his name, and he was in 8th grade my first year here. And they said, he will love you and he needs to meet you. And at that time when I started an Annunciation, I said to myself, I'm going to be unapologetically who I am. I'm not going to step into a closet. I am not going to be anything but myself. And I'm walking down the hallway the first day of school and past the 8th grade, and I just felt this, I just felt like the class was staring at me. So I turned around and Victor was like, oh, and you could see it in his eyes, oh my God, there is someone that could understand who I am. And I turned around and walked right over and introduced myself to the 8th grade. And throughout that year, Victor, I just saw Victor grow and flourish. And when he left here, he went to Archbishop Carroll, and he went there and he was bullied for a few years, but then he grew and was elected homecoming king and went to college, and now he's living in Texas and having, you know, being this wonderful human being that he knew that he could be. And that year, my first year here, and watching him grow as a person influenced me and strengthened my resolve to be who I am no matter what.
Wow. Thank you for sharing, Richard. Powerful. Someone else want to share?
Sure.
Okay, go ahead, Sarah.
Well, thank you, Mr. Smith. When I was a child, I was one of those kids who really, really struggled in school. I would study hard just to get C's, and math was my biggest challenge as a student. I remember getting an F+ when I was in high school. My mom looked at me, she's like, to deal with this. And I had all sorts of supports in place. I had tutors, I had teachers who worked with me. But no matter what, I tried, or no matter what supports were in place, math was just always a huge, huge challenge to me. It didn't really start, mathematics didn't really start making sense to me until I was in college. And, I think that's a few years ago, even when I first entered teaching, I was like, oh my God, I got to teach math. I don't really like teaching math. But I think back to my experiences as a kid with learning math, and honestly, I love teaching math. I really do. I even remember a couple of years ago at my old job, I was talking with the other teachers. We were talking about, we were having a meeting about our test scores on the most recent Scantron or whatever it was, and I remember the principal saying, the class that made the most gains in math is Miss Barrett's class. And to me, it just kind of solidified, it just made me think about, how I took my experiences learning math as a kid, how I had the struggles. I feel like that really has influenced how I teach the subject now. I understand those kids who struggle with the subject. I understand those kids who I tried my best to understand those kids who are successful in math. And I don't know, I feel like my experience as a kid really influenced me in how I teach.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Okay. We're going to move forward. Mr. Smith, did you want to, you and Sarah kind of start at the same time? Go ahead.
I'll make it sort of kind of brief. It was back in 2012, and Miss Lewis and she was my principal back then as well, at Center City Public Charter School before they transitioned from Nativity. And then there was I was in charge of SGA, and there was an election, and there was one particular student who he was always getting into trouble at the school. And he decided to run for a particular position in the SGA. And he gave out lollipops and the whole nine. He ran a fierce, campaign, but he lost. And so he was so upset that he went home and told his dad. And his dad, I think it was the same day or the next day after school, we were out on the blacktop, dismissing the students. And the father came up to me. He was so irate. It was a big crowd, a big to-do. And I think fast on my feet. I'm a quick thinker, so I was like, in that moment, I could either, go toe-to-toe with this guy or make it so it's a win-win situation. And I kept asking him, how can we make this so it's a win-win? Or something like that I was telling him. And he was just yelling at the top of his voice. And, it was a big, people were parents were like, what's going on? And yada, yada, who. But I kept asking him, how can we make this a win-win? And I was calm, and Miss Lewis was like, I guess she was shocked that the parents was going off that much. So we went inside the office and we defused the situation. But in that moment, I was thinking more so, how would the narrative look of me as a teacher going toe-to-toe with a parents who only wanted to see his son win at something as opposed to getting those negative calls. And so I had to think at that moment, I have to come up with a creative way to bring this person in to the circle of different direction that he was going on, because he wanted that position so bad. So I had to create a special position within the SGA just so he can be feel like he won something. And at that moment, I felt like it's all about compromise. And that's why I chose the circle, because the circle is more like a completeness. And so, and then, you know, the father actually told Miss Lewis, like, all he kept saying was, how can we make this win? You know, like a win-win situation. And the father apologized to me later, but it was like, you know, teachers have to be, either we're going to be the fuse or the water to out the fire. You know what I mean? Like, so in compromising, and in that moment, it just gave me a different perspective of, as my role as an educator, I could either be the trigger or the, you know, the person who's going to try to find a win-win situation for both sides. And I think that by me creating a position for a young man, it changed his behavior in the school overall as well. And then Miss Lewis was like, you know, you should have blah, blah, blah hit me. But I'm like, no, I can't do that. So, you know, I looked at it as a way for me to make this person feel better about himself confidently, or his son. And then the father felt good that his son was able to do something worthy of, as not getting a negative phone call, getting a positive phone call as well.
Okay, awesome.
So that kind of gave me a different perspective about teaching when it happened.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for those stories. Okay, so whatever your events or whatever your stories were, they greatly impact us as teachers, right? And, you know, some of those stories can, at least for what I heard, they're all very inspiring. But they inform who we are, and they inform how we approach the work. And I think what's important when we talk about this notion of bias is the events, the ideas, the philosophies, the things that we bring with us. Some people use the term baggage. I prefer the term the bundled software that we bring to the table as educators. It cannot jade how we look at our children who don't hold those same values. So this is the picture you see here. I'm calling the crumble dollar theory. And the simple question is, and it's not a rhetorical question, which one of these would you rather spend? That's a tough question. Which one would you rather spend? Anybody want to take a stab at that? There is no wrong or right answer. Which would you rather spend?
I can answer that, Ms. Nelson. I would spend either one because it all spins. It doesn't matter if it's crumbled or if it's straight. It's still $1, and it will spin. So.
Okay. They both spin. Okay. Thank you for that. Someone else? That's it?
I feel like sometimes it can almost be a little disrespectful if you're, you know, give a cashier like a crumpled up dollar, you know, kind of put it up to them to have to kind of, you know, unfurl it themselves. You know, It almost feels like it can be a little, you know, you're putting extra work on them. It almost feels kind of like a symbolic kind of disrespectful thing, whether, you know, instead of giving them a more crisp dollar.
Awesome. Okay. So if you had the crisp dollar to give to the clerk, you would give it to them for the sake of making their job easier?
No.
More or less, yeah.
Okay.
It is just a symbolic thing.
I can appreciate that. Here's the
I
thing.
appreciate what Brendan said, but I'm the opposite. I think I get rid of the crumbled dollar first and hold on to the crisp dollar and put that one in my wallet.
I think it depends on where you are. You might give the crumbled dollar away at 7-Eleven, but not at Macy's, right?
I don't know. I've been working for tips all summer, and getting a crumpled up dollar bill does not feel great.
I think I would have crumbled $1 first before I gave it to them. I mean,
I would spread it out. Yeah.
Okay. Here's the thing. These $2 bills represent the children who come to us every day. And if you have a classroom full of neatly ironed out dollar bills, your job feels and goes so much easier. But all of our children don't come to us like that, right? Some of our children, you know, for whatever reason, they do homework twice a week instead of 5 days a week. They don't always come to school in uniform, right? You don't see the mom until the mom complains about something. The phone number changes every 5 to 6 weeks, okay? The child, you know, doesn't necessarily listen and follow directions the way we want to. But be that as it may, they're equal, right? And we have to make sure that our biases, the philosophies, the opinions, or whatever events that shape us as humans, right? Because we approach the work as human beings first, then as professionals. We have to make sure that our thoughts and our opinions, again, going back to the definition of racism, we have to make sure that our thoughts, right, our thought patterns, our speech, and our actions, right, and in terms of symbols, even our body language, don't come off as being prejudiced or biased towards that crumbled dollar bill, because we are going to have some crumbled dollar bills, okay? But here's the key. The families that send a quote unquote crumbled dollar bill to school have the same love as the family who send that nicely, neatly creased dollar bill to school. Their love for their children is equal. And that's how we have to approach the work when we talk about this notion of equity. Okay, how we doing? Okay. Again, going back to our list as it relates to boys, right, versus black boys, let me read these words one more time. For boys, we have young lions, different, rambunctious, energetic, excited, mischievous, curious, soulful, misunderstood, and overlooked. Then we have, they're all the same: rambunctious, serious, potential, misunderstood, creative, accepting, complex, and burden. Here's the question I have for you, going back to those $2 bills, the crumpled versus the straight dollar bill. Are boys, right, because we're being gender specific here, do we believe boys of color and white males, do we believe they are equal? That's the question on the floor.
Can you ask the question one more time?
Sure. Going back to this notion of the crumbled dollar bill versus the straight dollar bill, I'm asking, are boys of color equal to white males? Are they equal?
To me, of course, they're equal.
Someone said, of course. Okay.
100% they're equal, but it's just the prejudice that we have, our preconceived notions that we have, that then puts them in these categories. But to me, 100% equal.
100% equal. Someone else? Thank you for that.
I agree with 100% equal, because they both have the title of boys. So regardless of what's before that, they're still boys. So they are precisely equal.
Thank you for that. Someone else? These are daily dollars that are going to end up being a Starbucks gift card from Miss Peltier Lewis. So anyone else? Rack up the bucks.
I think the narrative is that we're all equal, but like I said, growing up in the Virgin Islands and the Caribbean, I felt like I was equal to my white counterparts. In most instances, I felt like I was better, but that's just how my parents raised me in that surroundings. Transitioning to New York, I started to see a different way of how we were both differently treated. And so, I think your environment, if you're not molded with a good foundation, you start to feel less than, because the larger society is majority white. And so the dominant culture tends to be the one with the power. And so when you have a minority class, be it black or brown people, you tend to feel less than, because the dominant culture don't experience what you experience on day-to-day challenges. And so you question yourself, like, why am I being treated this way versus them? Because you don't hear those stories about them being treated the same way that you are when you face certain situations in life. So we can share whether they're equal or not, but the narrative will be, yes, in theory they are, but the shared differences are, we know from what we see in our encounters that they are not treated equally. And so, as myself, a young black man, growing up, I definitely felt that I was equal to, but then you see and you hear some of the stories from others, that it's not. And it's not how you feel, it's just the society that we live in. Those we don't share the same experiences where we're always on the success side.
Okay. So I think if I could paraphrase what you said, Mr. Smith, you said, we are equal. You used the word but I think and is more appropriate. You said you were raised with a sense of racial pride, right? And that racial pride is important because in other spaces you were made to feel less than. Is that a way of capitulating what you said?
Yeah.
Encapsulating what you said?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Here, I think we can all agree that we are equal. What ends up being important, again, going back to that notion of equality and value, is who we are as adults, who we are as human beings, who we are as teachers, how that plays out in our interaction with students. Okay. So I think, and you're going to get, we'll get to that. Okay. Let me keep going. So we're kind of moving out of the living room and into the HVAC system of the house. And this is chapter 4 of the book, where we talk about this notion of the relevance gap, specifically our pedagogy and our culturally relevant content. And this is, we're going to have some fun. Okay. How about that? Okay. We took our stretch break. So let's keep going. We have about another 35 minutes. And we're going to get really interactive in another minute. Okay. Culturally relevant pedagogy. If you're not familiar with Dr. Gloria Billings Laston, she is awesome. She did work on this notion of culturally relevant content in the mid-90s, and essentially culturally relevant content or culturally relevant pedagogy can be described as a form of teaching that calls for bringing non-traditional teaching methods, practices, and engagement types into the mainstream to highlight the experiences and cultures of students whose experiences and culture have been pushed to the margins. Okay. And essentially what she's talking about is decentering whiteness in the content that we teach, but she also deep dives into this notion of not just the content, but how the content is taught. Okay. The next slide is one of my heroes. Dr. Janice Hale is a former professor of education at Wayne State University in Detroit, Michigan. She wrote 2 books that I think are super important. I wish I had read the second book before I had published The Burning House, but she has a book called Learning While Black, and it talks about, it highlights this notion of how do we decenter whiteness to avoid the disenfranchisement of African American children. Her first book that I quote extensively in the book, Black Children and Their Roots, Culture, and Language. She talks about culturally relevant pedagogy, and this book is, don't quote me on this, but I'm going to say this book was published in 1984. She calls culturally relevant pedagogy placing the values, language, behaviors, mores, and culture at the center of communication, learning, and classroom interactions. Okay, and as you deep dive into chapter 4, and even in parts of chapter 5 and 6 in the text, I quote her work extensively, particularly around this notion of Black male learning styles. And there is no Black male learning style per se, but one of the things that she highlights from her research is that when we place the values, language, behavior, and mores of children at the center of teaching, they excel and perform higher academically. And that's anecdotally, that's based on classroom work, and even end of the year testing. Okay. Okay, the cocktail party theory. Does anyone who read the book, does anyone remember the cocktail party theory offhand? And want to kind of give a synopsis of what I say the cocktail party theory is? Not everyone all at once. Okay, for the interest of time, let me talk about that, okay? What we're going to do, I'm going to stop sharing. And I want you to, we'll come back to the question I asked, but I want you to come up with a list of 10 books, okay? You can't cheat and give 7. Okay, I want you to come up with a list of 10 books that you believe all middle and high school children should read, okay? 10 books. And you could split it. It can be 5 and 5. You can think of 6th through 8th grade reading these 5 books, and you can think of 9 through 12 reading the other 5 books. But for the purposes of this exercise, 10 books. And if one of those books is, more than half of the books are slanted towards high school, that's fine. And if more of the books are slanted towards middle school, that's fine as well. But come up with 10 books, and then be prepared to answer why for your top 3. Be prepared to answer why for your top 3 books. Okay, and let's take about 5 minutes. My phone says it's 11:04. It's 11:05 now. Let's come back at 10 after. 10 books. We have 2 minutes. Okay, we have about 1 more minute. Okay. Go ahead and unmute yourself. If you don't have the full 10, that's fine. For the in the interest of time, we want to go ahead and move along. Do I have anyone who would want to share their top 3? Miss Williams, pronounce your first name for me. Is it Brandwin?
Yep, you said it perfectly.
Awesome. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I'll give you you said top 3, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
To Kill a Mockingbird.
Okay, Harper Lee.
Yep, The Alchemist. And I'm kind of tied for 2, but I'm going to go with the one that, because I teach middle school language arts, the one that I love to teach is The Outsiders, S.E. Hinton.
Hinton, okay.
And I'll leave it at those. I came up with a list of 5, but I feel most strongly about that. I'll give you my 4th just because it was kind of a close tie, but this is more like for high school. The Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass.
Okay.
I have not taught it in middle school, but that was just, it was a profound read. If I taught high school, I would love to teach that.
Awesome. Thank you, Ms. Williams. Someone else?
Yeah. Hi, this is Miss Missy.
Hi, Missy.
Yeah. I said the first one is the Bible. The second one is The Alchemist, and the third one is Pride and Prejudice.
The Bible, The Alchemist, and Pride and Prejudice.
Thank you.
Is that Jane Austen?
Yes.
Okay, I'm getting old. Okay. Thank you for that. Is there any particular book in the Bible, or we're going after all 66 books? You got to teach the whole thing.
Yeah, basically it gives them a good foundation just by just reading it.
Okay, awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Someone else?
I'll go.
Okay.
It's not my number 1, but I also said my number 1 is Illusions by Richard Bach. It's and I said that because I think as far as spirituality goes, that's a wonderful book to talk about different forms of spirituality. Then I said Pay It Forward.
Pay It Forward.
There's a adult book, so that would be good for 9 through 12, but then there's also, it was rewritten for middle schoolers, and I think that would be a good book. It was also turned into a movie. And then my third one is Life of Pi.
Life of Pi.
I just love that book, and I think that would open up other further conversations of spirituality.
Okay.
Me?
A few more people?
Can I talk?
Yeah,
For me,
go ahead.
the first book is Good Night Stories for Rebel Girls.
Good Night Stories.
For Rebel Girls.
Yep.
So I like that because it's about the strong women in history, and it's written in a very simple form for little girls that can read to read. The second one is Who Moved My Cheese? I think it's a simple book for everyone, little kids, like small kids, adults. It helps you to be strong, and when you are in difficulties, how to move forward. So don't get stuck in a place, or just move forward. The Prophet, I read that one the first time when I was a teenager, and I think it's a great book to help you to also for get strong in life and for good values and how to live life.
The Prophet. Okay. Okay.
That's Khalil Gibran.
Oh, yes. Okay. I'm familiar with the author. Okay. Any other takers?
Yes. Mine's also was the Bible, and I had just put the Bible, but when you said any particular books, I would say Proverbs, especially for kids, because it's pretty simple and straightforward. So Proverbs for the kids. Not a particular book, but for Dr. Seuss books for the younger kids, just because of the creativity that it shows. It's very colorful. It's very creative. It's very thinking out of the box. So Dr. Seuss books. And for the older ones, I had a couple choices. These aren't school books, but Rich Dad, Poor Dad, because it teaches them the relationship of money. And sometimes I feel that, kids, they don't get a good snapshot sometimes of money at an early age. And I believe that if that was presented to them earlier, then they'll have a different relationship, with money.
Kiyosaki. Okay. Who was that speaking? I can't seem to find my.
Nelly.
That.
Oh, I wasn't speaking, but I can go.
Go ahead, Miss Nelly.
David Foster Wallace's Consider the Lobster. Is that too hard for a middle school kid? It's basically a collection of essays, but Consider the Lobster is pretty cool. Gilgamesh would not be for middle school, but Gilgamesh is very cool. Ulysses, obviously, James Joyce. Sound and the Fury, I don't know.
Faulkner. What did you say before Faulkner? You said James Joyce? Ulysses.
Ulysses. Faulkner, Sound and the Fury. Absalom might be better, but Sound and the Fury is probably where you'd have to start. Gilgamesh has a lot of content that probably isn't palatable for maybe even high school kids, but I just read it. It's amazing.
Okay. All right. We have time for 2 more people, and then I'm going to move us along. Any other taker?
I have some books that I wanted to share. I also have The Sound and the Fury by William Faulkner, but I would pick probably The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. I really like how it addresses, like, as a Black person, like, you may want to change your race because you see that someone else is better just because they have blue eyes. I also had A Raisin in the Sun because I feel like it's really important to talk about a modern Black family and how they can financially struggle and do what they can to, like, provide for their family, even if things seem a little shady. And then the last one I had was If Beale Street Could Talk, because I feel like it presents a really accurate depiction of Black men, especially in the criminal justice system.
Okay, so that's 4. Which one you taking off the list?
I'll take The Sound and the Fury off the list.
What? You can't do
I mean,
that.
I like it, but I feel like the other 3 are better.
Nicole, you just lost your Starbucks gift card. You can't take Faulkner off the list. I'm joking. Okay. Well, one more person.
So I also had Ulysses and Life of Pi, but one that I think is really great way to sort of introduction to political allegory. Wizard of Oz.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Sorry.
Okay, Ulysses, Life of Pi, and Wizard of Oz. Okay. Here's okay. Go ahead and mute yourselves, and I'm going to start us back up. Here's the question on the table. And this is a rhetorical question. Which of these books did you read? Of the books on your list, how many of those books did you actually read in middle and high school? That's the first question. How many of those books did you actually read in middle and high school? And then the other question that I have is, how many of you are at least familiar with about 25 to 30% of the books that were named by your colleagues? Okay, and those are rhetorical questions. How many of you believe that you are, well, let's up the ante a little bit, are familiar with half of the books that were named by your colleagues? Okay, that's the rhetorical question on the floor. Okay, here's the question that's not rhetorical that I want us to answer. Let's say, for instance, Richard and Brandwin and Nellie, I'm choosing you all randomly, but you're in charge. Okay, you three are in charge. We have Consider the Lobster, Gilgamesh, Ulysses, and Nellie. I just noticed that you cheated because you have The Sound and the Fury too, but that's okay. You have 4 books there. That's okay. And then we have The Alchemist, Illusions, Pay It Full. Oh, Richard, you cheated too. I didn't notice. You have Life of Pi as well. Brandwin, you have To Kill a Mockingbird, The Alchemist, and The Outsiders. What if any of you are in charge? What does that mean for the other books that got named? Let me ask the question again, and I'm going to rephrase it. If we put Nellie and Richard and Ms. Williams in charge of determining what books are going to be read for either a school or a school district, or maybe even an entire state, if they make those decisions, what does that mean for the other books that were listed by your colleagues? Does someone want to take a stab at that? There is no right or wrong answer per se. Go ahead, Ms. Williams.
There's going to be a bias potentially, or most likely.
There's going to be a bias potentially. Someone else?
It might not take into account other people's, what they like to read or their style of a book. It would just be more, like Brandwin said, more their personal likes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Personal likes, other biases. Okay.
So this is really a question about the canon, right? I mean, there's only so many things you could put on, you know, for the school year, and something's going to have to get edged out. So you'll have to consider time, and hopefully a long enough time that a lot of these could be, you know, moved in, or just maybe could we cheat and portion out certain
No
parts?
cheating.
Okay.
No, ask your question. Can we?
Just, I mean, a way to, if you wanted to really incorporate it, would be just, you know, certain chapters, and then it would let the kids have more time to do work outside of the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Mm-hmm. I like your thinking.
Well,
That notion of, I believe it was Mr. Smith who said he was a circle, and he talked about this notion of compromise. Okay, I like the way you're thinking. I like the way you're thinking.
For myself, it wasn't so much I like these stories. I do, but that's not solely where I'm coming from. I'm also trying to think about the themes that I think should be introduced to these students. Like if I were in charge, still doesn't mean I'm going to make perfect decisions, but that's also what I take into consideration when I teach a novel.
Say that one more time in terms of the perfect decisions. Can you repeat that, Ms. Williams?
Well, first off, I know I'm not going to make a perfect decision, but a novel I like is not solely what drives me. I take into consideration, and actually I take this into consideration first, is the theme or themes of the novel. And do I feel that this really, the students need to experience this, and so we can have discussions about it? What are they, how is this novel going to benefit my students?
Mhm.
Whether or not they, I hope they like it, but they're not, all students are always going to love the books anyway, but at least there's going to be a message there. Hopefully they take something away from it. They've learned something.
Ms. Peltier got her Starbucks gift card back. So congratulations again, Nicole. Here's my point. I think, and I don't think there's a right answer per se. I think your answers are spot on though. There is always room for these books, even though there may not be room for these books in the curriculum. So we're not dealing with this notion of, if I can move our, well, here are my books. And really I cheated because I would say any book by Toni Morrison. So I cheated too. So I wasn't hard on people because a lot of us named 4 books. But if you ask me to name my top 3 books in another year, it would probably be different. But I think because of the world we live in, particularly in America, Orwell's 1984 is super important. And it just opens us up to a lot of conversations about democracy, how it works, freedom, access, and the use of language, and how it shapes not only public opinion, but shapes how we think. But the larger point is there's room for all of these books, but if you want to connect with the students that you teach, sometimes we have to put down Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, okay? For those of you who are elementary school teachers, and Ms. Williams, I think you're responsible for the middle school ELA and even middle school social studies teacher. You have to be thinking about, if you have not already, what are my conversations going to be with my students once we return on the 27th? Because most of us have been shuttering in place, and most of us have been quarantined, and we've all been on social media, and we've been watching the news, right? So our students are going to want to talk about what's happening in this world, right? And we can't put them to sleep with The House of Seven Gables, okay? So I have to say, I'm impressed by this list of books that you all chose in your top 3 and your top 4s. But just do know that the books on your list that are 6 through 10, there is space for them, because I think we can all agree that a lot of the books that are on our list, we didn't necessarily read in high school. We didn't necessarily read them in college, okay? Let me move us along. Going back to this notion of a cocktail party theory, I talk about in the book, I was teaching at an alternative school here in DC, and I was teaching my students Shakespeare's sonnets. And one of my students by the name of Bakari Turner, he said, "Man, Mr. Williams, what is this? We don't want to learn this. This don't mean nothing to nobody," right? And Bakari scared me, because up until that point, I had never received any negative feedback from my students in terms of what we were learning. So he kind of took me for a loop. But then the other children, if you recall, they chimed in and they were like, "Yeah, this is whack, Mr. Williams. You're whack now, Mr. Williams. Why don't you just go home, quit, dig a grave, and jump in it," right? Because I was trying to teach Shakespeare's sonnets. But I quickly came back and I talked about this notion of a cocktail party theory. And what I said was, you need to know this because you don't want to be at a cocktail party and have someone bring up The Life of Pi or The Outsiders or the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass and you not know what they're talking about. The fact of the matter is, there is no cocktail party, right? When you go places and you are exposed to something that you are unfamiliar with, you just learn. There is no negative penalty for not having been exposed to certain content. But I think in a lot of ways, because we have centered whiteness in our curriculums, we tend to scare teachers into scaring students into believing, if I don't know this, I'm less than. Okay? And again, it's not an academic zero-sum game, meaning if I don't teach this, my students won't get to learn that. Because part of our job as educators is to empower our students so that they are going to want to keep learning, A, when they walk out the doors, and B, once they've graduated from high school and once they've graduated from college, and so on and so forth. Okay? And the academic zero-sum game, this is something that Ms. Peltier and I came up with last night, but it's this notion of critical information, critical in quotation marks, being replaced by culturally relevant information, and that hindering children and rendering them ill-prepared and at risk for, you fill in the blank, okay? The blank I filled in for my students was, you're actually going to look foolish at a cocktail party, okay? So moving us along, okay? Staying on this topic of culturally relevant pedagogy. Here is our third president, Mr. Thomas Jefferson. And the question that I'm asking is, should we teach Black boys about Thomas Jefferson? There is no right or wrong answer to that. But what I say for us as teachers and as educators, we have to get to a point where we are teaching a non-sanitized version of history. So it's okay to teach Thomas Jefferson. We could be talking about notes on the state of Virginia, the writing of the Declaration of Independence, some of his personal letters that he wrote. But I think it's also important that we talk about the fact that he was, in many ways, a burgeoning anthropologist, right? Who was just, super inquisitive and in a lot of ways scientific, but that he was also, he had boxes in his brain that didn't touch, to the degree that he was practicing racism as a person who was a slaveholder, and said that he thought that all men were created equal. But yet and still, African Americans were people who, what are some of the things he said? They don't sweat. They're inclined to work long hours without the need for rest or breaks or things like that. So the point is, when we teach, quote unquote, when we teach the heroes and sheroes of European history, that is not culturally irrelevant. The danger is not presenting a balanced view of history. Okay? Is everyone with me? Okay. And when we don't teach a balanced view of history, and when we don't have culturally relevant content and culturally relevant teaching practices, it leads to disenfranchisement. Okay? And I can't stress enough that that is what ends up leading our boys to futures that we don't want. Okay. The basement of the burning house, we don't have much time to spend there, but that goes back, I was referencing this notion of who are we referring and what are we referring them to? And I just ask you all to consider, for our students who are in need of tier 2 and tier 3 supports, that we be mindful of labels that we put on them, particularly special education labels are not just education labels, but they have political ramifications. Okay. Okay, we're winding down here. I talk about this notion in the book of Firefighting for Children, and I split the work that we do as educators into the political and the pedagogical. And by that, I simply mean that we have to advocate politically for the children that we serve, particularly our most vulnerable and our most disenfranchised groups. Okay. So, and just sidebar, Ms. Peltier, I will make sure you all get the recording. And if anybody wants the PowerPoint, I will send it to you. Okay, so if I move too fast or you want to refer to it later, that's fine. But I will send you the recording and the PowerPoint. Okay. When we talk about firefighting for Black children, here is something that I didn't tell Ms. Peltier, but as of, I hope, the Friday before Columbus Day, I am working on a workbook, which is a firefighting toolkit. Each of you will get a free copy of this toolkit. And essentially, it is going to be a workbook that's going to allow you to self-pace yourself in terms of your advocacy work and working with and supporting Black children. And you can see there are multiple quote unquote domains here. Some of them are harder to reach than others, but it's an opportunity for us to self-pace, to be mindful, and to be reflective of the work that we're doing. Okay. Okay, so we're winding down. I have here a self-assessment tool, and I just want you to take a few minutes. This is right off the previous slide, and you are giving yourself, for instance, this first bullet, if you will, says understand that the education of Black children is a political act. Excuse my typo there. C and children should not be capitalized. But I want you to score yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. There are no zeros. Score yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. And this is for you. I encourage you to do it now. But do know that when you get the companion / workbook, this feature, this page will be in the book, and it'll give you the opportunity to reassess yourself as you go. And here's the theory behind this. As your score increases, you're going to see more efficacy. You're going to see stronger social, emotional engagement from the Black boys that you serve, and you're going to see higher academic output. Okay, so as you grow, they're going to grow. It's a symbiotic relationship. Okay, I'll leave that up for a few more seconds. There's a second part of the self-assessment. We spent a lot of time on bullet number 2 and bullet number 4, I would even say, and then bullets 6. I would love to come back and spend 2 days talking about bullet 7. We'll see. you don't have to share your score, but I am going to share mine as I self-assess myself last week. And if you're higher than me, then good on you. I think I can sit down and I can give you this and you can do this work, or you can join me in doing this work. My score was where am I? A 53. Okay. I'm sorry, a 52. Okay. What does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. What matters is where you are now versus where you're going to be in December versus where you're going to be in June. Okay. So I only shared my score, again, thinking about this notion of staying in safe spaces. I shared my score because I just want you to know that no one is approaching this work perfectly. No one has all the answers, but together we can figure out things as a group and as a team. Going back to Hende's video of his basketball team reversing the ball, right? That's probably one of the, when we talk about offensive concepts, not to bore you all with basketball, but one of the hardest things to do because we tend to pass the ball to the person who's open. Reversing the ball is very difficult. So it takes teamwork. And it's actually a perfect metaphor for the work that you all are undertaking this year, okay? One person can't create equitable spaces. It's gonna take all of you working together, staying in communication, to bring these boys to the worlds that they deserve and the futures that their parents have set for them. Okay. Last but not least, I just want to leave us with a video around this notion of Black genius. I'm going to, of course I don't have it, but let me find it really quickly. If you're not familiar with this, just kind of sit back and relax. You're in for a treat. Let me bring it up really quickly. But this is Cab Calloway and the Nicholas brothers. They are giving a performance and what is considered by many to be one of the greatest dance performances in human history, okay? But we do have a commercial here, so there's always that, right? Can you thumbs up if you can see my screen?
No. No way.
Come on. No. No. No.
No.
No. Only Discover has no annual fee on any card.
Discover, I feel like they should pay me. So, I've seen that many times. Someone posted it in color very recently. So if you've seen it before, hopefully you got a treat from seeing it in color. I think the point is that our children all come to us with some form of genius. And I think part of our work is to make sure that we're doing everything in our power to make sure that that genius can shine through in our classrooms and in our school buildings. And if us being in a virtual space right now, to do our very best to make sure that their genius shines through in our virtual and distance learning spaces. So there are a few more slides on the PowerPoint, but I think we'll go ahead and end it there for the sake of time. I thank you for your attention, your sharing, your storytelling, for being vulnerable at certain times. And I look forward to working with you all again in the future.
Desmond, thank you so much for coming and sharing just so much with us, allowing us and facilitating this space for us to reflect. Social justice, we always say it's in the details, right? Justice is in the details. And equity and justice, and truly, even within our Catholic identity and in our work to ensure the success of every student, we have to start first with ourselves. Have an opportunity to be vulnerable in this space to ensure that we create an equitable space for all students. Desmond, when you talked about at the beginning, you talked about creating schools as an equitable space for Black boys, then allows for buoyancy for everyone else. And I think that is just so telling. And we want all of our students to be successful. We need to look at this work from this lens. And then look inward to see, where do I need to start to ensure that I am a firefighter in this work? And I just want to say also, I really appreciate the idea of the zero-sum game. The idea that there's enough room at the table, that by empowering all minds, you're not taking away from any one mind. By teaching and equipping students with cultural responsive pedagogy, it's not taking away from someone else's history or pedagogy. You're building up, and it's the idea of buoyancy, bringing everyone up. So again, thank you for allowing us this opportunity as we're preparing for our scholars. We appreciate your work. We look forward to our free workbooks, Starbucks gift cards for everyone. You get a Starbucks, you get a Starbucks, you get a Starbucks. And we appreciate you. And for those who haven't yet received the book, Desmond, we will be putting in another order because we have given the book to our assistants and to everyone who has passed by. It's a great read. So we will reorder with you today so that we'll have them for folks before the end of the week.
Awesome. Again, I thank you all. This is important work, and I believe we're at a pivotal time in history, right? And I think we hear that a lot, and to some degree it becomes cliche, but I think no one could have told you on Valentine's Day of 2020 that there wouldn't be any standardized testing. We've said all along, we got to give our kids standardized testing. We got to give our kids standardized testing. Boom. No standardized testing in the spring of 2020. We've said all along, right? We don't have enough monies. We're not well resourced enough to give all of these children computers and laptops. Boom. We sent all of our children home with computers and laptops, right? There's no Wi-Fi. How would we support Wi-Fi in our buildings? We can't give hotspots to children. Boom. We gave children and we gave families access to Wi-Fi and hotspots. So the point that I'm trying to make is everything is up in the air. And I think this is a time where we can rewrite the agenda for groups that have been traditionally marginally disenfranchised. So again, I thank you all. I look forward to working with you all. Ms. Peltier has my information. If anyone needs me to be a thought partner with them or wants to talk offline, I'm more than welcome to engage with you in that.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Desmond. And if we can give him a virtual round of applause or a hand clap, we just ask that God bless you with the school year. You also embark on a school year with your scholars and in your work.
No, I thank you all, and thank you for that. I need some blessings coming this way, so I'm taking all of those.
Luz is not a priest yet, but he can probably still bless you.
Yes, sir. I'm gonna take that, Mr. McHale. I'm gonna send it all my way.
Okay, well, you guys, lunch will be here at 12 o'clock, so we will have lunch. We'll set it up in the break room. So help yourselves, socially distance, of course. Again, Desmond will be in touch. Thank you so much, Mr. Williams, and let's have a great day on purpose the rest of the day.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.